Before there were coins, banks, or Bitcoin, civilization measured its fortune in something far older: land, the first currency you couldn't fake, forge, or multiply. The titles and empires of history rose or fell on who controlled the soil. Today, over $380 trillion of global wealth can be traced back to that ancient foundation. But how did land become humanity's ultimate store of power? And why does it still rule, even as money goes digital? The answer starts where our civilization itself began. After the Nile's waters receded each year, the landscape of Egypt changed shape. Fields were erased, new banks formed, boundaries vanished beneath fresh silt. To restore order, teams of surveyors, often priests or scribes, walked the muddy ground, stretching knotted cords, measuring every edge with rods cut to the royal cubit. This ritual was more than geometry. It was the foundation of state power. The area of each plot, counted in satat, determined not only who could plant and harvest, but also how much grain would be owed to the treasury. Scribes recorded these numbers on papyrus, building the earliest land registers. At the heart of it all stood the nilometer, carved with cubit marks, silently tracking the river's rise. Each reading meant a new tax rate, a recalibrated burden, a chance for survival or ruin. In these records, land became more than earth. It became obligation, authority, and the backbone of civilization. In 1086, William the Conqueror ordered a survey of his new kingdom. Clerks fanned out across England, recording every manor, field, and villager in the Domesday Book. Each entry measured not just acres, but the weight of obligation: who held the land, who owed service, who paid the king. Land was more than a possession. It was a chain of duties. A Norman knight might hold a manor in exchange for soldiers, while a peasant strip meant days of labor owed to the lord. In manorial courts, disputes over boundaries and inheritance filled rolls of parchment, each decision echoing through generations. The ceremony of livery of seisin, passing a clod of earth from one hand to another, sealed transfers in front of witnesses, binding the soil to the law. Over time, the idea of fee simple began to take hold, hinting at land as something that could be owned outright, bought, or pledged. Yet, in this world, status and credit flowed from the land, and every life was tethered to the demands it imposed. By the dawn of the industrial age, land was no longer just a source of feudal duty or harvest. It had become a legal instrument, portable, standardized, and recognized in the eyes of the law. Deeds, once handwritten and sealed in wax, evolved into precise documents stored in registry offices and banks. Lawyers and clerks pored over these records, verifying boundaries and ownership down to the last chain and rod. With fee simple title, land could be freely bought, sold, or pledged as security. This clarity unlocked a new kind of credit. Bankers, armed with ledgers and title deeds, began to lend against land's value. The invention of the mortgage allowed owners to raise capital, using their property as collateral. Suddenly, a patch of earth was more than a place to live or farm. It was the gateway to investment, industry, and the birth of modern finance. In 1829, a stretch of English farmland changed hands, not for crops or cattle, but for iron rails and steam. Bankers in Liverpool and Manchester opened their ledgers to a new kind of calculation: fields pledged as collateral. Their value transformed into the capital needed to lay the world's first inner-city railway. Mortgages signed and sealed in the vaults of local banks unlocked the funds that would drive steel tracks across the countryside. Each parcel of earth underwritten by a deed became a building block for industry. Soil traded for speed, hedgerows for locomotives. The original bank covenants, still kept in archives, record how these rural mortgages fueled the leap from agrarian routine into the age of mechanical power. Landowners, once measured by acreage alone, now held the keys to progress, their property converted, line by line, into the machinery of a new era. Global real estate now stands at more than $380 trillion, outweighing all stocks and bonds combined. But this vast wealth is not shared equally. Over 85% of land value is held by the richest 10%, concentrated in a handful of cities and private estates. In London, luxury towers are owned through shell companies, their true holders hidden behind layers of paperwork. A real estate economist describes land as the world's oldest and most reliable form of collateral. Banks trust property above all else. Meanwhile, a renter in Hong Kong spends half her income on a single crowded room, watching as developers reshape the skyline and fortunes rise or fall with every transaction. The oldest asset still silently rules the modern economy. Gold promised scarcity, but new seams could always be found. Fiat money relies on trust in governments, and its supply can be printed at will. Bitcoin's code enforces a digital limit, yet it lives in a world of shifting rules and fragile consensus. Recent attempts to tokenize real estate, like the Aspen coin offering, raised millions but left investors unable to redeem tokens or enforce their rights. Blockchain land registry pilots in Honduras and Ghana stalled when paper records and political interests refused to yield. Scarcity can be mimicked in code, but without real-world enforcement, digital substitutes remain shadows of the original. Today, the world's richest 10% control over 85% of all land value. As digital fortunes rise, the contest for the Earth's oldest asset intensifies. In the end, power remains rooted in soil.